Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Susan Kelly, president of the City Club. Welcome. Today we have the opportunity to look at an issue that speaks to the very heart of our community, an issue that profoundly affects our families, our kids, our businesses, and our future. What will it take to achieve and maintain excellence in our schools? Who needs to step up to the plate? And who is ready? Our speakers are Jim Scherzinger, Superintendent of Portland Public Schools, Gregg Kantor, member of the Portland Business Alliance, and Portland City Commissioner Jim Francesconi. On Friday, February 14th, join us for the first of a two-part special series on the legislative agenda. My, how that ties in today. The legislative agenda for this year's session and some of the challenges faced by our citizen legislators. Our guest speaker for the first of the two-part series will be Senate President Peter Courtney. City Club members, next week is the kickoff for our annual membership drive, and I challenge each of you to bring in one new member. Start thinking and recruiting today, and there are lots of non-member guests here today, so there's plenty of people to talk to. In the new member category, today we welcome Adam Van Loon. Adam? There he is. Adam is publisher of March Publications and has recently joined the City Club and hopes to become involved. Thank you, Adam, for joining. Please note in your current bulletin that we are looking for a chair of a research study that we're going to undertake on the role of the Portland Development Commission here in the city. There's a yellow card or two on each of your tables, and if you are interested or want more information, please contact Wade, our staff person, Wade Fickler, and he can tell you more about it. Our board host today is Carol Witherall, member of the Board of Governors and professor of education at Lewis and Clark College, and she will ask the first question of our speakers. Following Carol's question, even before she's finished asking, please be lined up at the microphone, City Club members. However, in honor of so many special guests and parents here today, we would like to open that privilege to non-members on this special occasion. Just be courteous with your question, keep it to 30 seconds, and that will allow as much time as possible for many questions. Broadcast of City Club programs this quarter is made possible in part by the corporate underwriting of Kaiser Permanente, Nike, and Washington Mutual. We are grateful for their support. Our first panel speaker is Jim Scherzinger, Superintendent of Portland Public Schools. Jim has a mathematics degree from the University of Santa Clara and a PhD in economics from the University of Oregon. He was director of the Legislative Revenue Office in the Oregon Legislature for nearly 20 years prior to becoming CFO for the school district in 1998. Clearly, in addition to managing a school district, Jim knows funding, both of education and government services in general. His skills are mightily tested in the current environment. Like the other participants today, Jim is a member of many civic organizations and serves on boards and commissions. In addition to Jim being on the panel, I'd like to welcome Mike Taylor, Superintendent of Park Row School District, here today. Our second speaker is Gregg Kantor, who also has a long history in government and community service in Oregon. Gregg's undergraduate degrees are in geology and environmental studies from the University of California at Santa Barbara, and he holds a master's degree in urban planning from the U of O. I love to refer to the education, especially with so many students here, so that people can be thinking about what degrees and what graduate degrees led these people to where they are today. Gregg originally worked with Bonneville Power Administration as a government affairs specialist. He then served as communications director for Governor Neil Goldschmidt until 1991. From there, he went to Portland General Electric, and then in '96, Gregg moved to Northwest Natural and was recently appointed Senior Vice President of Public and Regulatory Affairs and Communication. During his career, he has served on the boards of the Oregon Business Council, Oregon Business Alliance. He chaired the Classical Chinese Garden Trust. Thank you very much, Gregg. And he has been a board member of 1,000 Friends of Oregon and Livable Oregon. I first met Jim Francesconi 28 years ago when he came to St. Andrew Church in inner northeast Portland as a Jesuit volunteer. He had just graduated from Stanford, majoring in history and humanities. Now, those are good degrees. After his year as a volunteer at St. Andrew, he proceeded to law school at the U of O. From 1978, he managed a private law practice by day and community service, filling evenings and weekends. He became a leader in the Portland Organizing Project and co-founded the Youth Employment and Empowerment Coalition. He serves on the Urban League Board, the Youth Council of Work Systems, and is past chair of the State Juvenile Justice Advocacy Advisory Committee. This is just a sampling of the many boards and commissions in Jim's busy schedule. He was elected and re-elected to the City Council beginning in 1997 with current assignments including, well, some assignments including fire, general services, and parks and recreation. All three of our panelists today are devoted to their families and community and have been City Club members for years. I can't signal out too many, but I will welcome especially Jim's daughter, Micah Francesconi, who is a student at Jefferson High School. And with that, we'll begin with Jim Scherzinger.
Vernon Elementary School in Northeast Portland has about 400 students. Most of them are low income, most of them minorities. Each year, the fifth graders at Vernon write state reports. You probably did that when you were in school. These reports are not all that different from the ones that you did, except for one thing. They're required to research the internet for information, to decide what information to pick, to transport clip art, to design a brochure, and to make a PowerPoint presentation to the class. Schools today are different than when you or I, or even our parents, went to school. My son, a fourth grader at Maplewood, brought home homework on probability, a subject that just a few short years ago you didn't get to until high school. Why do we do this? These students are preparing to be successful in an economy that is more global and knowledge-based. But behind all this, something more intentional and far-reaching is going on. When you and I went to school, the goal was to offer the best curriculum the education system could offer and to sort out the students. If you got it, you got an A, and if I didn't learn, I got an F. It was not the responsibility of the school to be sure that I learned. Today, we have President Bush's No Child Left Behind. We have state school reform, which passed 10 years ago. And in Portland Public Schools, we have our own strategic plan, All Children Succeed. In a knowledge-based economy, there is no place to go if you do not reach a standard in literacy, in math, and in other subjects. The education system has always failed some children, disproportionately low income and minority children. But now schools are responsible, or if you spend time in the legislature, accountable for the success of their students. So what does this mean? Well, first, it means that we must act differently. We must set a standard for what children should know, a higher standard, like my son in probability. We must know what each child knows or doesn't know, so that we can change instruction to meet the needs of each child. We must involve parents in the work of the school, because without parents, there are many kids that we cannot get to standard. And we must integrate social and other community services into the work of a school, because many children will not succeed without those services. So, how are we doing? We have a handout. I think many of you have it. On the first page of the handout, it shows that students at Portland Public Schools are achieving at unprecedented levels. In reading and math, where we focused our limited funds, achievement has risen every year in the last 4 years. Depending on the grade level, percentage of students that meet the rigorous state reading benchmarks has risen by 18 to 30 percentage points. The math benchmarks 17 to 30 percentage points. These gains have occurred for a reason. Our board, for example, has adopted far-reaching achievement and school options policies. Many of our schools have completed comprehensive school reforms, and more are in progress. As a result, some of our highest need schools have the highest achievement scores, especially in elementary schools. Systemic math and science reform have raised math scores across the district. We've adopted uniform, standards-based report cards in all our elementary and many of our middle schools, so that parents get reports every quarter on how well their child is doing relative to standards, not just the old ABC system. We built a new student information system and financial system on time and under budget. The student system began a partnership with other districts that we expect will lead to a single system statewide. And my IT director, Scott's sitting right out there with a big smile on his face. We believe it'll have large cost savings and operational benefits for all districts in the state. We've reduced our facilities costs to below the state average. We've sold many of our surplus properties and have begun efforts to convert our more complex properties into reserves and ongoing operational support. Across the district, we have learned to do more with less. For example, on the page 3 of that handout, it shows the number of employees of the district in our general fund, and it shows the change over the last 12 years. In those support activities, the central support activities have been reduced in terms of employees by 65% since 1990-91. To the benefit, especially of special instruction, where the number of employees is increased to meet new federal mandates in both special education and in English as a second language, and protected as much as possible the employees in schools, teachers, assistants, and principals. We have done more with less. But with all of that, there are two things that remain that are even more important. First of all, our students and our families continue to show great support for our educational efforts. Parents and neighborhoods have stepped up to the plate with their time and money again and again to soften the blow of budget cuts. And in spite of budget problems, our teachers and our staff continue to be passionate about education. They've made our classrooms stimulating places where students are taught, motivated, and inspired every day. At the end of the day, this is why we come to work and what we are about. Now, having said all this, we do have serious challenges. Not all of our students are making the progress towards benchmarks that we would like. Like other districts, we have not been as successful in high schools as we have been in elementary schools. We need more rigorous and relevant courses, especially in our high-need schools. We also need to create small learning communities so that students do not get lost in the system. To meet these challenges, we must make our goals and expectations clear. In November, after a national search, I hired Dr. Patricia Pickles, the superintendent of North Chicago, Illinois, to spearhead and implement aggressive vision for Portland. Since December, Dr. Pickles, who serves as our chief academic officer, has met with a wide variety of internal and external stakeholders to hone the academic vision for the district and develop the shared plan of action for next year. Dr. Pickles would be here today, and I said, you better not show up now, since I'm going to say this, except she's meeting with the leadership at Portland State to examine ways of enhancing teacher training to meet the needs of schools. The plan itself will be presented to our board on Monday. I can say it is built on our existing strategic plan and outlines specific activities, steps, and strategies that are needed to turn vision into reality. Its components will be incorporated into our budget recommendations to the board next year. This action plan, in conjunction with the other efforts I've described, lays the foundation for tremendous success in Portland if we are willing to make the investments we need to ensure success. Which leads us to our last challenge, the budget. There's a chart in the handout that shows our budget. It shows how we spend our money. Couple of things to notice right off. On the left side, 75% of our funds are spent directly by schools and special instruction. That's sort of the left side. 14% on building support, custodial, security, school buses, computer support. Only 4.4 on central support, business functions, finance, budget, purchasing, legal, communications, HR, and district leadership. The right side looks at it another way. Over 80% of our budget is spent on people, salaries, and benefits of the workers, of our staff, our teachers, our principals, those that work for the district. If cuts are to be made, they must come from people. And if you look back on the FTE chart I showed earlier, if we have to make major cuts, those cuts have to come out of schools and out of special instruction because that's where our people are now after all the reductions of the last few years. Right now, we stand at $57 million cut from this year's budget. It's described on the next page. Some of those occurred when we adopted the budget in March. Rather than laying off more teachers, we raised class size through attrition, subcontracted for custodial services, we cut programs like Green Thumb and Moshi Moshi, we closed 2 schools, we cut administrative positions. We also proposed to control healthcare costs by capping the insurance premiums. We gave no cost of living raise. We made changes that controlled workers' compensation costs. We've imposed these limits on managers and nutrition workers in our negotiations right now with teachers over them. We lost $21 million of this after the budget was adopted, an unprecedented drop in revenue in the middle of a school year. We made further cuts mid-year and now are looking at a 24-day furlough for all employees, which is not only bad for kids, but a loss of about a month's pay for our workers. Next year, which is the bottom of that page, based on the governor's budget, and assuming we must restore the lost days, which we must, we face between a $27 and $50 million shortfall. You get to the high end of the shortfall if we fail to control our healthcare costs and if PERS is not reformed. We get to the low end if we do those 2 things, which really highlights the importance of those 2 aspects of our budget. Those are vital to the control of all school budgets statewide. On Monday, I released a budget framework that outlines the rest of the options for balancing the budget. We had our first community meeting out at Madison High on Tuesday night. I think we had 300 to 400 people out there. Pat Thompson, the principal, is right down there. She was really surprised by the number that showed up. We'll have 5 more of those, and I'll then make a recommendation to the board on February 27th. The board will then hold a series of public hearings and adopt a budget in mid-March. There are actually the copies of these frameworks, if you want them, that are available somewhere over on the side. We can figure that out. If you pick one up, you'll notice there's a lot of choices. There are a lot of choices in that budget framework. But as I worked through them, I came away with one inescapable conclusion. I believe we are at a crossroads. We face severe financial perils, but we have also laid the foundation for tremendous academic success if we can make the necessary investments. I am heartened by the recent efforts to find local support for schools, and I understand we'll hear about that some in a few moments. If they or other efforts succeed, we can take this district, and more importantly, our children, to the next level of achievement.
Good afternoon. On my way out of the house this morning, I got two pieces of advice. The first from my wife, who said, "Speak slowly," which I will try and do. And the second piece from my 9-year-old daughter, who said, "Yell when you say things you really mean." So if I'm loud, you'll know why I'm loud. My role this afternoon is to provide a business perspective on what's happening to our schools. I am a board member of the Portland Business Alliance and the Oregon Business Association, but I don't speak for those organizations today. I'm here to give you my views of what the crisis facing our schools mean to our economy and to our business, to the business climate of our state. And you also need to know that I'm a product of public schools. I attended Chapman Grade School and then spent 1 year at Lincoln High School before finishing my education in California. I believe strongly in public schools. But today, as a business person, I have serious doubts about the quality of the education our children are receiving. And I'm not alone. As you know, parents across the city and throughout the state aren't sure the schools can deliver their children the education they need to succeed. What you may not know, and what I want to focus on today for a few moments, is that those in our community who run businesses aren't sure the schools can deliver the workforce they need to succeed. And I can tell you this is a concern shared by business people all over Oregon. This is why the Portland Business Alliance and the Oregon Business Association supported the passage of Measure 28, and it's why the Oregon Business Association and the Oregon Business Council list K-12 education as their top priorities. These business associations believe deeply that the success of Oregon's economy is inextricably tied to the success of its schools. In 1989, Oregon produced its first state economic strategy, called Oregon Shines. Its guiding premise was that abundant, high-paid, low-skilled jobs were a phenomenon of Oregon's past, and that Oregon's future depended on its ability to build a knowledge-based economy, one fueled as much by computer chips as wood chips. 10 years after that plan was published, there were more Oregonians employed in high technology than in wood products. We accomplished what we said we would do, and it was no accident. We added a technology sector to our economy by convincing companies like Intel, Epson, LSI, HP, and many others that, among other things, we valued education. We sold them on the notion that Oregon is a place that nurtures knowledge and nurtures innovation, a place devoted to producing the most skilled workforce, not just in America, but in the world. And today, these companies are asking themselves whether they were sold a bill of goods. And we have to ask ourselves whether we are serious about competing in a world economy where increasingly success is defined by how much your citizens know, not by how cheaply they will work. There are more than 50 school districts across Oregon that are intending to close their schools early this year. The Portland Public School District has the shortest school year in the nation. And you just heard from Jim what the prospects look like for next school year. All of this means our children will not only receive less hours of classroom instruction than children in every other state in the nation. They will receive less than children in British Columbia, Japan, Belgium, France, the Netherlands, and the list goes on. And the numbers aren't even close. An Oregon ninth grader this year will spend 18% less time in a classroom than the average ninth grader in America, 20% less than a ninth grader in France, 27% less than one in Japan, and 41% less than classroom time than a ninth grader in the Netherlands. Unfortunately, this isn't a dirty little secret we're whispering amongst ourselves. The nation is watching our schools implode. Over the last month, the plight of Oregon schools has been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, on the NBC Nightly News, and USA Today, and in The Economist magazine. The article in The Economist, which appeared in January, said all the states are in financial trouble, but, quote, Oregon is in the worst mess of all. As our schools melt down, so does our state's reputation as a good place to grow a business and raise a family. And the economic consequences of that are going to be staggering. How can we travel the world, or even this country, recruiting new businesses when we have the shortest school year in the nation? How can we expect existing businesses to invest new capital in Oregon when they aren't sure they'll have the skilled workforce necessary to succeed? The answer is we can't. Measure 28 didn't pass, but the strong showing of support it received is a statement that many Oregonians are worried. In fact, that Measure 28 actually won in Multnomah County is a reflection of this community's deep belief in the importance of public education. But despite that belief, despite the endorsement of the Portland Business Alliance, the Oregon Business Association, and the Oregonian, Measure 28 did not pass. And one reason it didn't is that many in our community and across the state believe our schools aren't wisely spending the tax dollars they currently receive. The prevailing view is that too little is making its way to the classroom. And I can tell you this is the view of many in the business community. You need to know that the votes on Measure 28 by the membership of the Portland Business Alliance and the Oregon Business Association were not without intense debate. There was a great deal of discussion about PERS and how it compared to private sector retirement plans. There was discussion about teacher health care benefits, administrative staffing levels, and the cost of special education. There was discussion about whether buildings are being efficiently used and whether Oregon really needs 200 separate school districts. In the end, though, the majority of the membership of both organizations felt that if Measure 28 failed, the damage that would be done to our children, our economy, and to other vulnerable citizens dependent on public services would be too great. As I listened to these debates, it became clear to me that the business community is willing to support the investments necessary to make sure Oregon schools provide a world-class education. But today, they are not convinced that adding more dollars to the current system would actually produce better schools. And I suspect the majority of voters feel the same way. These doubts about our schools, though, aren't fueled by exhaustive study. In large part, they are the product of anecdotes and media reports, a dangerous combination where fact and fiction is blurred together, feeding a public already prone to believe the worst about public education and about government. If we are going to ask our voters or the business community to invest in schools, invest more in schools, whether we do it statewide, regionally, or just here in Multnomah County, we must first develop a shared understanding of some basic facts. As a community, we need to clearly understand where the money is coming from and how our schools are currently spending it. We need to understand what is driving costs up and what has been done to set priorities, improve efficiencies, and cut back where possible. We need to collectively understand how our schools compare to those in other states, both in terms of costs and outputs. And finally, we need to find common ground on what it will take to produce world-class schools. A lot of work has already been done on these issues. The information is there, but we have not begun to reach out and use it to build a consensus. The business community is ready to engage in such a process. The Portland Business Alliance has created an education committee that is currently wading into the numbers in search of the facts. And the Oregon Business Council has spent years looking at what it takes to build world-class schools. But the business community is just one player in what needs to be a broad-based consensus-building exercise. In my view, we have a choice. We can continue to point fingers at the school board, the administrators, the teachers, the unions, and the legislature, or we can offer a hand and accept our civic responsibility to work together on behalf of our children and our state. Decades in search of a way to create strong, financially stable schools has proven one thing. In these matters, there really are no shortcuts. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg, and thanks to the City Club for hosting this important event, and thanks especially to everybody in this room. Because of the efforts of everybody here and the efforts of people in the classroom right now, we're coming back. We've hit the bottom and we're coming back, and we're doing it right now. I'd like to begin with a personal story, too, about my daughter, who's here today with my wife, Shelley. Micah Amparo Villegas Valencia Francesconi was born in Bogota, Colombia. Shelley and I adopted her when she was 3 months old. We enrolled her in a Catholic school for her freshman year of high school. It was a terrific school, but Micah was not happy. At the beginning of her sophomore year, Micah visited Grant High School. That evening, she came home and told me, both with surprise and delight, that she had heard 3 languages in the classroom hallway on her way to school. We transferred her the next day. She is now 18, this is the only hard part, and a proud Latina in an otherwise Irish-Italian family. She will graduate from Grant in May. She takes 3 courses that are team taught with professors from Portland State, where she is also earning credits. Every day from 1 until 3, she also takes dance classes at the Performing Arts Magnet, Jefferson High School. From 3:30 till 7, she dances with the Jefferson Dancers. According to her director and her mom and dad, she's a star. She is now auditioning with Ballet Hispanico, the New York University School of Dance, and others. And someday soon, she's going to be supporting me. Sooner than you think, Micah. Public education has given Micah the teachers, the instruction, the discipline, the mentors to accomplish her dreams. Through Portland Public School, she found her life's calling. She found opportunity, equal opportunity that guarantees not success, but that all children will be able to reach as far as their talent and initiative will allow. Public schools are our common ground. If we truly believe the American dream of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is every child's birthright, then we must provide equal opportunity through public education, regardless of race, class, or economic status. I believe these are the values we stand for as a people, values that make us who we are. That's why thousands of Portland parents have remained loyal to Portland Public Schools. That's why principals like Mary Dingle at Marysville, Pat Thompson at Madison, Vonnie Condon at Woodmere, Linda Capranis at Beach, and all of the teachers who have struggled to maintain and improve the quality of education despite dwindling resources. I'd like us now to thank all the school board members who are here, parents, educators, and members of the school's foundation. And also let us recognize with our applause all those people and also help out public education who refuses to let one of the best urban school districts in the nation die. Please stand. But now, folks, we're on the edge of the exodus. Portland parents and students are giving up on the last best urban school system, not because they have lost confidence in the schools, but because they've lost confidence in us. We have not given our children and their parents any reason to hope. The level of cynicism has grown so great, the doubt in the minds of parents as they choose where to live and where to send their kids to school is so strong that hope can only spring from an ironclad plan with community-wide support. Together, we must build a local funding bridge to a permanent state solution. Since last May, Mayor Katz, Chair Diane Lynn, who is here, and I have been working with a coalition of parents, activists, business, and the school district to develop such a plan. We've been quietly polling, doing focus groups, and working to build a consensus. On Monday, we're meeting again to further solidify our work, and what I'm sharing with you today is my proposal for moving forward. But before I talk about this plan, I want to emphasize above all else that what our community desperately needs right now is not my plan, or the city plan, or the county plan, or the business plan, or the parents' plan, but a common community strategy to save our schools. This proposal today provides a minimum guaranteed level of funding. Plans to achieve even greater levels of funding are not in conflict. They complement this proposal. We all fail if we lack a common plan to save our schools, and failure is not an option. Any plan for stable funding will also fail unless we can guarantee quality education and fiscal accountability. Foremost in the minds of voters is the role of the legislature. Unless the legislature fixes PERS, business and residents may join together to defeat any school funding proposal. Portland school districts also have a role to play. Portland Public needs to support with money the plan for academic excellence that Jim just laid out. It also needs to do a better job of supporting principals and their school improvement plans, and it needs to implement the plan to close the achievement gap. We do not accept the lowering of state standards for anyone, including our children of color. And we do need greater accountability mechanisms and increased public scrutiny to make sure that education promises are kept and the revenue is spent wisely. Just as 6 years ago when I called for the audit as a condition of financial aid from the city, we must insist that bridge funding be preceded by closer public scrutiny of the school's financial records and funding decisions. I've asked the city auditor and as Gregg mentioned, the Portland Business Alliance to analyze the numbers you have been given today and to make any recommendations that they may have, and they're not going to have any, on spending cuts which the district can make without impacting the classroom. Sorry for the editorial comment. I've looked at the books. This is a terrible situation. But I also asked the City Club to form a special task force to do the same and to make its findings and recommendations immediately available to the public. If there's something that we've overlooked or some way to make cuts to get the money in the classroom, we need your help. We also need the help of the teachers union in the school district. We ask that you settle the contract. A bitter strike now will be devastating to any effort aimed at bringing new tax dollars to Portland Public Schools and keeping families in the city. The distrust between the teachers and the administration must be healed for the good of our children and the good of our city. Teachers, you are performing heroically under extremely difficult circumstances, and now you're being asked to sacrifice more. Micah's teacher paid out of her own pocket for the class to go on a field trip. Restoring public confidence does require sacrifice, however. Sacrifice which must be shared by administrators, and sacrifice which must be rewarded with a longer contract and increased wages in later years. By March 17th, we must bring a resolution to council with a specific school funding pledge. On that date, the Portland Public School District is required to give notice to teachers that they will be laid off next school year. If we do not have a firm commitment by that date, the layoff notices will trigger a stampede to private schools and moving outside the city. If middle-class students flee, we will forever lose the political will to properly support public schools. We've seen this play itself out in too many cities across the nation to think we are somehow immune from this reality. I believe this pledge must include a minimum guarantee of $35 million to be shared by all 5 school districts in Portland, with $27 million of those funds being dedicated to the largest district, Portland Public No. 1. Combined with fiscal accountability measures already discussed, this increased local funding will allow for 30 students per classroom for a complete school year for every district in our city. To convince parents to keep their kids in public schools, this pledge must be a promise we can guarantee. Laws currently on the books prevent the city from promising increased property taxes or income taxes for schools, but provide us with flexibility regarding business taxes. I propose the city pledge up to $35 million annually in the form of a 3-year surcharge on business taxes. Yes, we know that this is difficult times for our businesses, so we also want to do our part. In exchange for commitment from the business community to this temporary tax increase, the city should do the following. First, the city should lower the business tax we collect by $4 million by raising the owner's compensation deduction, which will give immediate relief to small businesses and to professional services, who will be disproportionately impacted by this surcharge. Second, the city should agree to permanently reform the business income tax under the leadership of Diane Lynn by lowering the BIT, adopting a payroll tax, and to begin to implement these changes now. Third, this additional revenue must go directly into the classroom and cannot be spent on administration or benefits. Did you hear that, Jim? And lastly, we promise to do all we can to find dollars to offset this $35 million we are asking businesses for. There are a variety of funding tools that are real but not a sure thing that we can try to come up with to ease the burden. Here are some of those ideas, and again, we must first look to the city. The city should receive more than $4 million each year in PERS savings from the proposed legislative changes. State law prevents us from simply picking up classroom costs, but we can give money to the school districts to free up more of their money for use in the classroom. This $4 million in PERS savings could be given to the schools for assistance on information technology, building support, school-to-work activities, and after-school sports. Starting next year, the city should offer $1 million annually as a challenge grant to the private sector to permanently fund all PIL athletics in Portland Public Schools. The successful Parks Levy, which many of you worked for, we put in money for the schools in that levy. $1 million annually for 5 years to maintain and improve ball fields, $900,000 for after-school activities, and $150,000 for playgrounds. But parks in the city should do more. Between parks and the city, we should appropriate $1 million a year for 3 years to give to the schools to purchase surplus school lands to protect open space and keep school playing fields in public ownership. Similarly, the city, with the county's help, should insist that $1 million of the annual $10 million from the children's levy be spent on early childhood and after-school activities currently funded by the schools. With the city and county contributions, this business income tax and payroll tax that I just talked about could be reduced from $35 million to $29 million. But we should not stop there. In these tough economic times, we really don't want to send our businesses to the suburbs. I welcome Commissioner Salzman, Commissioner Sten's ideas, which open up the possibility of residents sharing the burden. However, parents need surety now, and we must act by March 17th. Since an income tax, I believe, has a greater chance of being rejected by voters, I am confident that the council will join me in supporting a resolution that proposes a minimum of $35 million for Portland schools. If voters support a local income or property tax measure, we can use those funds to lower business taxes and provide more support to the schools. The state legislature should also contribute. Though we have no confidence that they can solve the statewide funding crisis any sooner than 3 years, They can adjust the school funding formula to reflect that Metro taxpayers are subsidizing rural schools. And they can help pay for Portland's crushing, disproportionate special education responsibilities. Surely they are recognizing that they are threatening our state's economic engine, which is right here in the Portland area, and our state's economic recovery by shortchanging Portland public schools. They should allocate an additional $20 million to Portland schools now. In exchange, we will guarantee that this money goes directly into the classroom, and we will pledge to work with them and others for as long as it takes to obtain a new, statewide, dedicated revenue source for all of our schools. Our schools have accomplished great things under great adversity. Just imagine what our schools could accomplish with adequate and stable funding, built on a foundation of accountability for every dollar spent. Imagine the heights of educational excellence we could reach. With these teachers and principals, with these parents, with these students, we could do anything. Let's stop lowering our sights and start raising our expectations. Together we can rescue the future and give all children the chance, as my daughter had, to take their destiny into their hands and shape it. We must not abdicate our responsibility to our children and our democratic values. Our job, yours and mine, is to collectively raise a standard that others will follow and end this decade-long assault on our children's hopes, dreams, and trust in the system. Public education is the greatest invention of a free society. Let's act like we believe it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregg Kantor, Jim Scherzinger, and Jim Francesconi for speaking at our Friday forum of our City Club on the crisis in education funding. Imagine this. The year is 2010. Public education in Oregon has successfully addressed its funding and equity and achievement challenges and is no longer held captive by the axis of mistrust and mutual blaming that characterized relations between urban and rural regions, school districts, teachers' associations, legislatures, and citizens during the early part of the decade. What do we have to do to make this civic transformation scenario come true? And do we need a statewide, multilateral task force to chart the path?
Where do you see spots?
Well, we don't need any task forces. What things are showing is, first, no task forces. The research is telling us what common sense is saying. First, it's educational quality. That's why Jim Scherzinger's talked about all the good things that are happening. The people want their kids to get into college and the workforce. That's the issue. And they need money and resources to do it. So first is educational quality. Second is there has to be fiscal accountability. The district has made big mistakes in the past, and those are still haunting it. So we have to do some things to demonstrate fiscal accountability. And third is we need a new dedicated revenue source for schools. I mean, we probably need a sales tax, is what I think, and it's dedicated to schools.
The task force idea I would agree with. I don't think you need a task force. But I would say, as I said in my remarks, that I think there is a disconnect between the public at large. We know only 20% of voters have kids in schools. We have to find a way of helping Oregonians understand the state of their schools. If you're not a parent, you're not tuned into it, you don't believe, you hear what you see in the media, you get anecdotes from people about inefficiency, and we somehow, if we're going to long-term get people to support additional revenues, additional investments in schools, they have to believe that the money is being spent in the classroom to create a world-class system of education.
I worked in the legislature for 20 years, and they have the technical ability to figure out how to raise revenue. What's lacking is the will to do it. And I think Jim, in particular, mentioned the things that have to occur to get that will. People need to believe that the school system, all the schools in the state, are there to succeed and to have all kids succeed and to prepare kids for college and the workforce. And if they have the confidence that they're doing that, I believe they'll support it. And that is what we need. We need the will to do it.
I'd just say one other thing, and that is that the piece that Jim handed out today, I think is an excellent start on trying to understand where our schools have come over the last decade. I'd encourage you all to make copies of it, hand it to your friends and neighbors. I've taken it, I've showed it to other folks, and they're shocked. I was shocked when I saw some of the numbers between 1990 and 2000, and I don't believe that information has gotten out of that people understand the kind of cuts that have been made.
Elaine Cogan, City Club member. I want to cue off the word accountability because, frankly, I don't understand it. Jim Francesconi says we've made fiscal accountability mistakes. The business community said we won't give you a dime unless you are accountable. What does that mean? And what are we going to do about it?
Well, I can do that. I just spent an hour on Wednesday in front of the House Education Committee talking about this. So I'm trying to figure out how to say this in 2 sentences. I think there's 2 kinds. One with respect to achievement and the other with respect to costs or funding. On achievement, the first thing that has to happen is some straightening out of the terms. I think there's a lot of confusion in the debate about what achievement accountability or educational accountability means. And you have to begin with the goal. The goal is that all kids achieve. And you have to begin with, is this something that you accept as a goal? The notion that the school has to be responsible for the success of every child is not necessarily something that everyone agrees to. But if you agree to it, then to be accountable, you have to have some very fundamental things. You have to have a set of expectations. What is the standard that you want kids to get to? How are you going to measure the standard? And because you can't hold someone accountable without saying what it is you expect and how you're going to measure it. We get a lot of debate about sim and cam, and there is a huge confusion around whether or not you disagree with the goal, that is that all kids achieve, or you disagree with this particular way of measuring whether or not we do achieve. But you can't, if you agree with a goal, you can't solve the sim or cam problem, if you think there is one, by getting rid of the measurement. Getting rid of the measurement does not lead to accountability. You just need a better measurement or a different one. So I think straightening out some of the confusion around what accountability means and how sim and cam fits into that is part of the solution. If you want us to succeed with all kids, and if you want us to be accountable for that, you have to say what the expectations are and how to measure it. And that's the debate they ought to have. There are some other things that need to happen, but those are the basics. On costs, perhaps it's just simply better information about what goes in and out of a budget and how these funds are spent. There's some very basic facts on cost. 85% of most school district budgets go to people. and how well those people are used is the bottom line of accountability, and part of it is having a clear instructional focus and clear objectives, but that's my sense.
Well, and unfortunately, the district and the school board's got a much tougher job than this Portland City Council, and I mean that. What they have to deal with no staff, can you imagine that? And they have to sort through the most important issues in the city. Having said that, those buyouts that were given to the top administrators, they're still living with this. And decisions like that are haunting the district. So there's a set of those kinds of decisions. The other is the public doesn't know who's responsible for PERS, but they know it's bad. So they blame that on the school board, and they're kind of hamstrung with that. And then there is the question of benefits. So it's those three kinds of areas.
Yeah. For the business community, I think accountability is a strange word. It's a vague word. But I would say for the business community today, as we face the issues of the schools that are in front of us, it means that if we're asked to put another dollar into the school system, that it doesn't end up in a retirement system that no private employer could afford, or in a retirement or in a healthcare package that no private sector company could afford over the long run. I'm not sure that's exactly accountability, but it is a trust, a fiscal trust that needs to be promised with the investments, because right now employers are increasing the required contributions that employees have to make, and their retirement systems are underfunded because of what's happened in the stock market, and they're having to put more money in it, and the benefits are not looking as good. So it is aligning kind of what they're facing, I think, from what the school district is facing.
Bill Savage, member. How to say this? I really hope you're right, Jim, and I'm just praying that your plan, and more power to you in getting ways to avoid the kinds of cuts we're looking at. But that said, if there are cuts, I guess my plea is that ultimately it's on the backs of the teachers and the other school employees, and that we need to make that clear. I don't hear anybody saying teachers are overpaid, given their training, given the incredible hours that they work, and the dedication they have to the kids. I don't hear anybody saying they're overpaid.
Question.
Oh, sorry. But they are, PERS and benefits are a problem, but I think we just need to make clear that we're balancing it on the backs of the teachers.
Well, and that's why, listen, I almost said it before you asked the question, so I'm glad you asked the question or the statement. Teachers, the numbers actually show that teachers are underpaid right here compared to teachers right around Portland. That's why I specifically put in our remarks that teachers deserve more money. Okay, so, and the other thing I want to say is, if you rate the popularity of teachers versus the popularity of politicians, it's not even close. And I mean that. The credibility of the teachers are way up here. So we need to work with our teachers, because not only they're teaching our kids, they're the ones that have credibility with the public.
We have time for one more question while we're still on video. I'd like to go a few minutes over, if it's okay with our panel, because we have a lineup with some students, and I really want to hear from them. So, Deb, if you'd ask the last question that's on coverage, and then, if it's okay, we'll go for a few minutes more.
Deb Andrews, member. According to the United States Department of Education report of 1993, curriculum is being dumbed down one grade level every 10 years. The American Psychological Association in 1998 report, The Rising Curve, tells us that IQ is increasing across the board, including minority and disadvantaged, 3 points every 10 years. The resulting instructional gap is expensive for children, schools, and society as a whole. Will appropriate level of curriculum and flexible grouping be considered as cost-saving measures?
Well, I can't speak to that report, and I'd be glad to get back to you at some point with some remarks about that or some comments on that. I think it is clear that the standards that Oregon has set are high standards, and our improvements and higher standards than have been for kids. The sort of issue that arises out of that is the way that we test. And does the test, is that an appropriate measure of the standard that's been set? And I think what many feel is that because we're being, we're trying to be cost efficient in testing, we use multiple choice tests, for example, that results in a dumbing down of the curriculum. I think that's an issue of measurement. If you want the school system to be accountable and you want a measurement, the question becomes, what is the quality of that measure? And but the problem is that if you want a better measure, it's going to cost more money. And we're not in a system that allows that at the current time. And I think people get a sense that this curriculum is dumbed down as a result, because the test itself may be inadequate.
Thank you.
My name is Jackie Weiss, and I'm a junior on the Lincoln High School Constitution team. My question today is, why is the district choosing this year to change the teacher transfer policy as well as the other non-budget related issues, the same year that, of this budget crisis that they're giving the teachers a major pay cut?
The question is about the contract negotiations that we're in with the teachers right now. The board has identified two fundamental issues in the labor negotiations. One is the financial issues that you're aware of. The second is a number of language changes in the contract, and the most important of those is it revolves around the transfer and assignment of teachers to particular jobs. The board feels that, as well as the staff, the leadership staff feel that in order to achieve the goals that have been set, that all kids achieve, that we need more flexibility to assign the particular skills of a teacher to a particular job to meet the needs of kids. And that's the reason for that. This system is not only under tremendous financial pressure, it's also under tremendous pressure to succeed, and the board feels that it needs this ability in order to achieve.
Thank you.
My name is Emma Barrow, and I'm a 7th grader at Fernwood Middle School.
And my name is Ellen Williams, and I'm also 7th grader at Fernwood Middle School.
And our question is, if like children are the future, if we're like the future of the country and everything, then